was the great accomplishment of LBJ in Congress in 1965. My father was a U.S. Senator from New York from 1956 to 19...
Senator Jacob Javitz was a distant cousin of my father. May he rest in peace. Both of them may rest in peace. And this is his son. I corresponded with him a few years ago. And he's saying something, he's reminding us now at the time of the George Floyd murder of the struggle it was to try to get equality in America, and how sad that it has gone the opposite way. And let's hope that it will come back to better times where people will indeed be treated as equal. And here he is. He's a really very pleasant and intelligent and person who can teach us this lesson about civil rights movement in America and the contribution of our distant relative, the late Senator Jacob Javitz.
And was a powerful voice in advancing civil rights, and especially the Voting Rights Act in 1965. His parents were poor immigrants from Russia, and of course no one had the right to vote there. Even in other European countries, so-called democracies, Jews certainly didn't have the right to vote. So the right to vote is a precious thing. The advocates of the 1965 Voting Rights Act argued that the right to vote is the right to participate in government. It's the cornerstone of our democratic society. Citizens' respect for the law rests on the belief that their voice is heard in the creation of the law. In 1965, the 1964 Civil Rights Act had just been passed into law, and LBJ was hesitant to propose another civil rights law as soon. But the Selma, Alabama sit-ins and the civil rights marches from Selma to Montgomery forced his hand. In 1965, poll taxes, phony literacy tests, and even moral character tests were used to systematically keep African Americans from registering or voting. The Constitution left voting eligibility to the states, and the Southern segregationists relied on this to fight the bill. But the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, passed after the Civil War, specifically prohibited any abridgment in the right to vote. In the end, the law was passed and is one of a handful of great historic pieces of legislation passed by Congress and signed by LBJ. Today, voter suppression is still a reality. These techniques include barriers to voter registration, early poll closures, and gerrymandering. They are only more subtle barriers than the conditions that led to the 1965 law. My father called these barriers then, and they are still now, a, quote, wall of fear, intimidation, harassment, trickery, and obstinacy. The answer is federal legislation to answer these problems. But today, Congress is so mired in partisan gridlock, it's virtually incapable of passing legislation dealing with these problems. So the best answer now is for everybody to go out and vote, exercise that right to vote, and make sure your friends and family, neighbors and coworkers also vote. Very much.
So, I think what he says is really, really important. And I was just looking at the date.
It's a morning of peace and calm, and people are coming together to reflect. Today marks 1 week since George Floyd's death.
So, what he's saying, this was 9 months ago. How interesting.
Thank you very much, Robert Finnegan, for your great
so
neighbors and coworkers also vote. Thank you very much.
So he's saying,
thank you very much, Robert. That right
so this is my conclusion, that it's really important to vote, especially after what happened to George Floyd. It's really important that we keep fighting for everybody to have equal say, because what happens in America influences the rest of the world. And America has a lot of power over other countries, which is why there have been demonstrations in Berlin, in London, as far as I know, at least those two countries. And we still have so much more to go, so much of a way to go. Also in Israel here, we still have a long way to go. So people will be treated equally, regardless of differences of religion, gender, sexual preference, race, whatever factors that tell people apart, that everybody should be treated equally and enjoy equal rights and equal duties, equal rights. So it's really important to vote. And I always had a sense of justice. Even as a young girl, I remember when I was living in the U.S., I was always interested in what happened to African Americans. I always found it's clearly connected to the Jewish plight and the Jewish persecution. What the African Americans had endured through centuries, and it's even stronger with the Ethiopian Jews in Israel that had both as Jews and Africans, a lot to deal with. And I was also very proud to be part of trying to help in that way. And I still wish I could do more. And I will do more probably one day, God willing. So don't forget, Americans.
Co-workers also vote. Thank you very much, Paul.
This is very important to remember. Americans, if you're watching this, please vote. And people in different countries, please vote for political parties that represent equality for all and speak against discrimination, whether it's race, gender, sexual preference, religion, whatever factors that everybody should really have equal opportunity. We're not, people are different, but we should have all equal opportunity, and we should not be voting for governments that discriminate.